Hello, I'm Riley Nicholson, the Executive Director of Symphony of Northwest Arkansas. Today we are in the Fermentation Hall in the Momentary in Bentonville, Arkansas. Today's program is co-presented by SoNA and the Momentary, a program entitled Sounds of a Moment, which explores time. Music must unfold over time. You can't experience it all at once. And because of that, music has the unique ability to play with time and to slow down time, bend time, stretch time. But perhaps most importantly, music has the ability to ground us in a present time and space. And that's perhaps more important than ever. With an unusual year, many of us are experiencing time expanding and contracting in unusual ways. So we put together this program to explore music through the lens of time, exploring our musical past with timeless treasures and our musical future with contemporary voices, all to promote a sense of peace and groundedness in the present. So without further ado, I present Sounds of a Moment, performed by Symphony of Northwest Arkansas, conducted by our music director, Paul Haas.
Mark O'Connor is a wonderful friend of mine. We met about 15 years ago in New York City. And I'm kind of sad when I think about him because I haven't actually seen him in about 8 years. And if you don't know him, he's a wonderful violinist, mandolinist, guitarist. He could play just about anything, and a wonderful composer. And this piece we're about to play for you is called Appalachian Waltz, and it is well on its way to becoming an American standard, if it's not that already. I'm sure you'll recognize it. Here goes. Clarice Assad is a really wonderful composer who I've just gotten to know recently. She's composed a piece here that skirts the line between an arrangement and original composition. She takes a whole bunch of themes by Bach and weaves them into her own piece, and it's not really pops, I would say, but it has a broad appeal to a wide audience, and so it's really fun for us to play, and we hope you enjoy it too. This is the Suite for Lower Strings by Clarice Assad. George Walker's Lyric for Strings is, frankly, it's one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever heard. And I get that comment whenever I conduct it. People in the audience come up to me and say, why don't I know this piece? It is the same order of magnitude of beauty as something like Barber Adagio for strings. It's unbelievable. We're very excited to play it for you today. I hope you haven't heard it before, because I want this to be your very first time. An incredible piece, George Walker's Lyric for Strings. Vivian Fung's Pizzicato is a piece that was originally written for string quartet, but then she arranged it for string orchestra. It is an unusual piece. Its harmonic language is different from what we're used to. And she told me, and you'll hear this if you tune in to the chat we have after the concert with the composer. She told me that it's based on gamelan music and other world musics, and you'll hear that in the sound. Now, most of you know, but if you don't, pizzicato is the Italian word for pluck, so when you pluck a string. So you'll notice in this one that all these strings have put down their bows and they are plucking their instruments. Hope you enjoy. All right, Adam Schoenberg's Slo-Mo. You all know, you've seen Slo-Mo if you have an iPhone. It's the setting of your camera on the iPhone that allows you to take a video and then it slows it down. And it has this magical, timeless, kind of bouncy effect where just everything stops. And Adam was telling me that this is the effect he's going for, when time stands still. And I can't tell you how heart-wrenchingly beautiful that becomes for me personally, and I hope for you too as you listen to it. This was originally from the slow movement from his string quartet, and I got in contact with him a few years back and said, hey, you know, this is pretty much the best piece I've ever heard. Would you please write it for orchestra, for string orchestra? And so we actually premiered this piece a few years back with SoNA. So without further ado, let's listen to Heart-Wrenching Beauty, Adam Schoenberg's Slo-Mo. The next piece we'll be playing is Benjamin Britten's Simple Symphony, which is, quite frankly, anything but simple. This is the finale from it. We hope you enjoy. This next piece is a piece that I wrote about 10 years ago, and the beginnings of it were when I was in St. Paul's Cathedral in London, and I heard melodies as they were singing hymns and the organ was playing that just hovered there in the air and stacked one on the other and built into this sound that I can't describe. It was so beautiful. And so I wanted to recreate that in a piece. And so I've used the second violin section to play the melody and the rest of the orchestra to act as the cathedral. And each time a note is played, the other instruments in the orchestra will hold that note a long time, just as it would be held as reverb in a cathedral. And my hope is that it gives the impression of being in a very large space, being lost in yourself and in that space. So without any further ado, we would like to play our final selection for you this evening, which is Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings in C major, the finale. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you in person soon, but in the meantime, this was a very meaningful experience to play music together again. Thank you also to the composers who you're about to hear from, composers Vivian Fung, Adam Schoenberg, and our very own Paul Haas joined us in a conversation on their music and how it connected with the themes of today's program. So please stay tuned and be well, everybody.
I'd like to thank both of you for joining me today, Adam and Vivian. This is a concert I've been really excited about for a long time. Adam, I've conducted this piece of yours before. We had a wonderful experience doing it here a couple years back, and Vivian, I know of you from Thunder Bay, where I conduct, and we've done this piece up there at least once. I know, probably like hundreds of times if we've done it once, and it's been really popular. And I wanted to bring it down here. So welcome you both, and would love to chat with you a little bit about your pieces and in some ways to relate them to the time we're living in. So welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't we start with, let's see, Vivian. Could you give us sort of a bird's eye view of your piece, what you were going after when you wrote it, and maybe a couple of things we can take with us as we listen?
So the piece is called Pizzicato, and Pizzicato is an Italian term which simply means plucked. For this piece, it's a short 4-minute piece for string orchestra. The players put their bows down and everything, all the strings are plucked. And the idea behind that, when I composed it, it was actually originally composed for string quartet. And I've since made it into actually a bona fide my first string quartet. And then it has also a string sinfonietta, which is the string orchestra component. But it's a standalone piece as well. And the idea behind it was just inspired by non-Western plucked instruments, and also the idea of interlocking rhythms borrowed from gamelan music. So you will see, that the ensemble works together to form these sonorities, and it's reminiscent of, other plucked instruments, maybe a pipa, maybe a zither, but not. It's my own language, but it's just inspired by that. And then it's very nice because it just is very rhythmic, and it has a few surprises at the end as well.
I'll say.
Yes.
That's
yes,
great.
yes.
So, one of the things that your traditional concert goer, orchestral concert goer will think of immediately when you say a plucked piece would be something like the third movement of Tchaikovsky 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering whether you have any comment to such a comment, or such a, is there something we can take from a traditional listening experience into this and be rewarded?
Sure. I mean, Tchaikovsky, Bartok, Ravel, all those composers I know well. And of course, you can't avoid that when you're talking about strings. So it's in the air, and I'm just trying to tweak it into my own language. So absolutely, you can't operate in a vacuum. And of course, especially Bartok, I think that was a big influence. Yeah.
Nice. Adam, let's switch to you for a little bit. I would love to talk with you about, in some ways there are similarities here, because beginnings as a string quartet and then morphing into an orchestral version. Can you talk to us a bit about how you came to this piece and what it means to you, perhaps what people can take into the experience?
So like Vivian, very similar background. This was this middle movement of a 3-movement string quartet that was commissioned by a chamber music society here in Southern California. And the quartet as a whole is called motio, which is in essence a study of motion. And actually, you, Paul, in the Symphony of Northwest Arkansas, approached me to adapt this for string orchestras, and then you presented the world premiere a few years ago. So the second movement, Slo-Mo, takes its name from anyone who is an iPhone owner, the Slo-Mo video feature, which allows you to shoot video in slow motion. And because the first movement of the string quartet is very groove oriented and extremely rhythmic and fast, I essentially wanted to do just the opposite and suspend time. And I've never really written music that was very, very slow and almost melting like. And I felt if there were a way to essentially stop time momentarily and allow us to immerse ourselves in this world, then I could create a different type of almost ethereal type of effect. And so the piece is incredibly gentle and delicate, and has this harmonic progression that's found in an earlier movement becomes the backbone for what the language is within this piece. And it moves very slowly and sort of makes one gesture and one type of statement.
I find myself telling the players as we are rehearsing it not to get bound up in the idea of changing exactly halfway between the beat. You know, when you get to those moments, more and I figured I might as well ask you this. We're talking in person. Just so long as it's together and it feels like it's a slow shift into another sonority, that it doesn't sound like you're sort of pouncing on this moment to like articulate halfway between the beat. Is that a fair representation that you're more concerned with the feeling than with the idea of pouncing with precision here?
Yeah, specifically all the solos that happen that have slightly more intricate rhythms that are sort of there's more of a conversation and dialogue between the soloists, but the backing section of the strings, and I'd say the harmonic foundation, generally would be played as together as possible, but there also is this crossfading of gestures between chords and also of these melodies that are shifting. So for me and most of my music in general, I'm always more about the effect and the feeling than the exact precision and execution, unless I'm wanting something super, super precise and focused. So to me, it's about finding a way to get deeper into the atmosphere of this world that I'm trying to evoke.
Sure. That's both of you have written just astonishing works, and it's, I don't know, there's a certain amount of pride that I get just to like be involved with something like this, just sort of by association. Vivian, could we talk a little bit about how your piece relates to time? And this concert itself is an exploration of time and the idea that music unfolds through time, but yet can itself manipulate time, and through that manipulation can actually have us more present in the space where we are right now. Do you have anything that you can talk about relative to time and space, and even the pandemic? I mean, let's be topical, right?
Yeah, so the way I experience music is very often tactile and visceral. So it's very much a felt thing. And I think rhythm, the idea of momentum and rhythm, I think is something that I return to very often. I've been writing a lot of fast music lately. I don't know why, but I think maybe the energy of a 5-year-old might have to do with it. but the idea that there's an innate pulse in the music that keeps the music going, and for me has a visceral quality to it, is very important. Even if it's slow music, I feel like progression and having it go somewhere is important to me. In that sense, I think for me, when I compose, I think of architecture first and foremost. I composed a piece called Aqua, that's for orchestra, in which I take the renderings of the Aqua Tower in Chicago, which is built by, or designed by the architect Jeannie Gang. And it becomes, the renderings become the piece, basically, the architectural renderings. So that's an example of, an extreme example of the type of things that I think about compositionally. But for me, you know, music is frozen architecture, you know, no, this, like, heard architecture. So for me, first and foremost, when I think of building a piece, I think of the architecture, and then the notes kind of fall into place. And so time for me is both structured and also flexible at the same time, because within it, within the architecture, you are molding the time as you go along. But for me, just having that frame is important when I'm composing. So, and then finally, I guess, when I'm actually going through the process of composing, and I don't know whether when you hear the music that you know, you also have that sensation, but when I am actually in it and I'm composing and going through the process, in the ideal moments, it becomes something spiritual, so that, you know, almost as if time has either suspended, or that you're not aware of, you know, what's happening. You know, either it's gone through an intense period where you were composing and it's, you know, 12 minutes have gone by, but you think it's 45 minutes, or the other way around, that it's like, you know, you're involved with the space and it just goes on forever. So for me, music, that process has a way of reevaluating, instead of looking at the clock, about this idea that, you know, the flow of the time becomes intense, and either it stretches or kind of becomes more concentrated, depending on what my flow is going. I mean, that's the best of times, when I'm under pressure and, you know, going through this deadline, and oftentimes, though, it's just agony.
Yeah.
But there is that sense of escaping time when I'm composing.
Right.
I don't know if that's the case when you're hearing it, but as far as my process is concerned, it just becomes part of that. It's as if the music takes over and I'm just part of that process.
Right. No, I can totally relate. And in fact, one thing that you said earlier, I think probably all of us can relate to as composers, getting in there to the first performance of a piece. And, you know, you think you know the piece that you wrote, right? And then all of a sudden it's being played by people who are just, you know, at the top of their game and have so much to bring to it. And all of a sudden, I mean, you talk about spiritual, it's like this, I don't know if I created that, but I guess I did, you know, and it just becomes this living, breathing organism, all of its own. And it just, I don't know, that to me is the magic of just this, I don't know, I guess, to bring something into the world, and it's just so privileged to be able to do that. Adam, would you be willing to talk a bit about time and space and how it relates to your piece?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Vivian said a lot of things that resonate with me, and sort of already summarized Slo-Mo and the idea of sort of suspending time and not wanting to be aware of time. But I think our perception of time, is, for me, is what's always so fascinating, whether it's in the actual compositional process, where as composers, when we're in truly embedded in the moment, and you know, you're sort of in your subconscious and living and breathing the music, that at least for me, I lose my sense of time. I can compose. I've had 12-hour days where I've literally not gotten up to eat because I'm just so in the world and not thinking about it. And then I look up at the time and it's like, oh God, all this time has passed. And I'm, you know, it doesn't happen obviously all the time, but that has happened. And so that's sort of a really fascinating idea to live with. In the same respect, when you go to a concert hall, as you said, I mean, our job as a composer, besides delivering hopefully a piece of music and a piece of art that will, at least for me, I want the audience to always feel something and be moved. That for me is always my main objective. Whether they like it or not, I want them to have some type of visceral reaction and response to it. But like all art, what's so glorious about what we do is that when you're sitting in the audience or at a museum looking at a sculpture and you're totally absorbed and in the world of what it is that you're observing, you lose your sense of time. And it's almost like a meditation. If you're truly meditating, you're not really thinking. You're not really you know, unless you're doing a counting meditation, right? So you lose the whole idea of what is happening around our surroundings. And so it's a moment to also escape and let go of everything that's going on in our world, and be immersed in this one environment that will hopefully be more inspiring than anything else. So Slo-Mo is very specific in that regard, as I wanted to sort of try losing the sense of time in a very slow manner through the compositional process. But of course, the world we're living in right now, on one hand, it feels like we have all this time because we're sort of trapped in our homes. But you know, we also are, all three of us are parents, and we have families to deal with and kids running around, and negotiating those schedules and trying to find time to also write more notes of music with whatever existing deadlines we have. So there's a big battle going on right now with what time means to us.
Sure. You know, and you're talking about slowing down time in slow-mo, and the idea of meditation. I think that's probably what drew me to your piece initially, was that uh, I sort of felt a kinship. Like I don't know, you sound like you meditate. Um, and I think we all meditate regardless of whether we think we do or we don't. But I've meditated for years, and this feeling of beauty and centeredness and calm, and sadness, and just sort of all these emotions coming together in stillness, in silence. That's definitely something I get from your piece. So I appreciate your sharing that connection. Um, Vivian, I get so excited when when I'm conducting your piece. It's just on the one hand, it's as you said, it's fast, and it has the sense of propulsion to it. But then it's also technically very demanding for the players, and clearly you knew this going in. But there's something about technical difficulty when put together with, you know, this inexorable momentum that is just pure energy. And I'm wondering if you like, if that's a calculated thing, or how do you get into that space? I marvel at people who can create this kind of propulsive effect. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about propulsion.
Well, you know, kind of, I refer back to what I said before about something being visceral, that it's felt, you know, you feel like you want to get up and move, and you know, when something stays the same and when something changes is also, for me, it's the timing of when to repeat and when to develop is also something that uh, is important to me. I'm not a minimalist composer. I'm probably sort of a maximalist composer, if you can say. so that, you know, things are constantly changing, and for me that constantly changing bit, but also kind of referencing things that have happened in the past is what for me makes the music interesting. So it's morphing, and actually, you know, that idea of morphing is something that I've been kind of obsessed about too lately. But the idea of propulsion, but also something that is you know, constantly being mutated and changed and developed, I think is what drives the music forward. So it begins, you know, a little bit minimalistically because of the fact that it just these interlocking rhythms, but then there's some sort of progression that's involved, and that and it actually goes back to the idea of architecture, because it's that idea of landing somewhere, that ultimate, you know, land, what you know, whether it be like a strummed chord or, you know, the texture or what have you. But um for me, those are the things that kind of drive the piece, and I think makes it interesting because it's constantly changing, so your ear is constantly, you know, attuned to what the next thing will be. So that keeps it interesting for me, and I think can be for the listener as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean the harmonic structure of it is just for, and like we all have heard gamelan music before. We've all heard different types of world music before, but just it's different enough, and clearly it's your own language, so that it just sort of yanks you over into another sound world. I'd love to steer the conversation a little bit, being topical and all, to what it's like as a composer right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging time. Um, I mean, I'm so grateful for the past that I've had, right? The commissions and the performance opportunities and the engagements, which really makes up a big portion of my family's livelihood. And that disappeared on March 13th when everything shut down. I mean, I had premieres scheduled in the spring that got canceled. Separating the business from it, just the creative aspect. I mean, everything's been a blessing and a curse. My wife is a TV writer and very very busy in the industry, and when she was in an actual physical room, she was probably gone from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. most days. And so the goodness of all of everything right now is, you know, we're having family dinners for the first time every night, which has been an incredible blessing. The amount of time I get to spend with my children on a regular basis has been great. The fact that Janine is now working from home in her writer's room is through Zoom, and her hours are 3 or 4 hours a day now rather than 12 hours, is great. So we have all of that. And that, but then on the same side of it, as all three of us can attest, you know, at least for myself, I should say, I was not designed to be the teacher for my own kids in terms of academics. And with the Zoom school and everything, it just takes up so much time. And so, quite frankly, for the first time in my adult life, if I'm going to be incredibly transparent, I've been um, more depressed ever. And I'm not a unhappy person. I'm a very optimistic person, but it's been very hard for me to actually create. In many ways, I'm almost glad these deadlines are being pushed back, so I can just focus on my family and myself. But it's concerning and alarming. And then, you know, we also have to show up to teach at the college that I work at Occidental College, and make sure that my students who are paying a hefty fee for tuition are getting everything that they need from me, and that I can be the best professor that I can be for them. Obviously want to take care of my family. I also want to write music when I'm able to, but things have shifted and I don't know what the landscape is going to look like. I apologize. That was a very long essay.
No, no, it's completely real, and I think I can certainly just dive right in there with you. I mean, I feel like it's forced us uh, to like to confront uh, things we took for granted before, right? It's forced us to, in some ways, reinvent ourselves, but in some ways, discover maybe what was important to us all along. And part of that discovery, for me at least, is this sort of painful. Like it jerks you around from things you thought you knew, right? And so the idea that, yeah, I mean, teaching math right now, right? I'm a full-on math teacher to my kids, and you know, language arts and foreign languages and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I'm home so I can do it, right? But I think, yeah, it's not a comfortable, like as meaningful as it is, it's not a comfortable meaningful. You know what I mean?
And your patience
Um,
tested. I mean, because your kids are locked up and not able to socialize and run. I mean, we go biking every day for almost 2 hours because they have to get out. Otherwise, it would be insanity in our homes.
yeah, no, absolutely. Vivian, love to get your thoughts.
I'm, yeah, it's so funny because I'm in a sort of a little different situation, being both Canadian and have dual citizenship between Canada and the US. And the landscape is a little bit different. So I've been getting a lot of work from Canada, and some of the orchestras have actually partially opened. So it's been actually really busy. And I have to say that I'm I'm very blessed and lucky that, and I don't take it for granted at all that it's a privilege for me to be able to work. And you know, a lot of people are struggling right now, and so I feel like every time I sit down to compose, it's like a privilege. So, um, but the projects have changed a lot. So when the shutdown happened in March, I was composing, finishing up a project, and then all of a sudden I get this call from the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, saying that they wanted me to compose a piece for virtual orchestra. So, so it it was really under the worst circumstances. I mean, my 5-year-old was at home all the time. We didn't figure out what to do yet with you know, the whole situation. He was home, and we were just, you know, taking care of him between me and my husband. And so I basically had a week during the nighttime, basically at night. And at that time, I was also coming down with bronchitis with everything that was going on. But I managed to compose a 5-minute piece for virtual orchestra during that time. And and it was really with the help of my family and also some really kind neighbors who, you know, happened, you know, my next door neighbor across the street happens to be a retired kindergarten teacher. And so she as soon as, and her nephew is a concert pianist. So she just said, okay, no, we have to come in and help. And without her, I don't think I would be able to do it. But so it's like, you know, I'm getting projects like this, and it ended up being a very almost, you know, the most probably emotional and spiritual piece that I've created. It's called Prayer. And so it's a 5-minute piece, but it was just under the circumstances, it was like one of the most difficult projects I've ever done, not because of the essential piece, but everything around it. So since then, you know, I've gotten a more of a steady schedule, but still, it's a big challenge to be a composing parent and having to juggle everything. It's still an onward struggle. But I feel like, you know, I've turned to music more since the shutdown happened as a means of staying connected with myself and staying connected with other people too. And I've found a lot of I don't know, solace maybe is the correct word, or some sort of groundedness by just doing, you know, and not stopping. So, but again, that is something I can say, and I know a lot of musicians and creators are just not wanting to create right now because of everything that's happening, and I totally get that. I don't know. I just am in a place where the juices are happening, and I feel good. So, but you know, everything around us is so much more complicated. So it's as if I have to be on like high gear, you know, to make things happen. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate that. I appreciate both of you opening up and sharing that about yourselves. I'm very thankful that we're able to have this concert. I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to work with you both again. I just I feel privileged to be able to talk with you both. I mean, I look up to you both. I feel like anyone who can say things with the force and the clarity that you say them musically should be paying attention to people like you. So thank you so much for being a part of this event. Thank you so much for talking with me and sharing of yourselves in this just really lovely way. And so we'll wrap this up now, but I just can't wait. I can't wait for this concert. Can't wait for this stream.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for having me.
Paul. Yes.
Right. Bye.